MyInova Summit 2019, realização Federação Acespro e Acespro Paraná, patrocínio Master Sebrae, patrocínio Platinum CGI, patrocinadores Gold, OBR Global, Instituto Cidades Inteligentes, Tramontina e Vieira, Copel Telecom e Governo do Estado do Paraná. Patrocinadores Silver, Reut Consultoria e Contabilidade, Fomento Paraná e BRDE. Patrocinadores Bronze, Local Web Corp, Cluster to Go e Dental Uni Planos Odontológicos. Apoio
Fomento Paraná. Nossa função é apoiar o desenvolvimento. Financiamos empreendedores e empresas de micro, pequeno, médio e até grande porte. E também obras de infraestrutura e equipamentos para prefeituras. Estamos presentes em todas as regiões do estado, por meio de uma ampla rede de parceiros. A Fomento Paraná oferece apoio técnico e estimula a capacitação dos empreendedores em gestão empresarial. Apoiamos projetos de inovação e desenvolvimento tecnológico de produtos, processos, serviços e marketing. Trabalhamos com prazos adequados e as melhores taxas para você investir no seu negócio. Fundos estaduais sob nossa gestão ajudam a oferecer juros baixos no microcrédito e para as micro e pequenas empresas. Também garantem seguro rural e aval para apoiar pequenos agricultores. Podemos financiar projetos de grande porte por meio do Fundo de Desenvolvimento Econômico. Fomento Paraná. Se você precisa, a gente financia.
Quem esteve aqui no evento ontem viu que um dos temas mais frequentemente comentados durante as palestras foi sobre Business Agility. E eu posso dizer para vocês que nós fomos forçados a colocar esse conceito em prática aqui no MyInova. Por conta de um voo que não chegou a tempo, nós tivemos que reorganizar a nossa programação e alterar a próxima palestra. Mas eu posso garantir para vocês que certamente todos tirarão muito proveito dessa nossa próxima palestra, pois ela vai falar sobre um tema extremamente atual e relevante: o DNA psicológico dos empreendedores de alto potencial. E para falar sobre esse assunto, eu convido então para que suba ao palco John Benning, por gentileza. Pode subir ao palco. Nós iremos falar sobre esse tema e o John, que é psicólogo e também mestre e doutor na área de psicologia organizacional, tem uma larga experiência nessa área, 40 anos de experiência também como consultor de empresas como Netflix, Royal Caribbean e United Airlines. Então, com a palavra com vocês, John Benning.
Me desculpa, meu português está limitado, and therefore I'm going to speak in English for the rest of today. I would like to talk about something that I worked on for the last couple of years in a completely different context, and then when asked to speak here, I think there may be some real relevance, but I think you all will be the judge of that, and hopefully you'll be part of the determination of that. So I want to talk about the psychological DNA of high potential employees, and then we're going to explore whether that's relevant and can be applied to entrepreneurship. It is a pleasure to be here. It's been a pleasure to be in Brazil for this week. Everyone's been so friendly. I've had wonderful experiences, unlike when I was in Paris 25 years ago, but that's another story. I am a big one for encouraging you to engage with me. If you want a clarification or you want to add something, it doesn't bother me for you to raise your hand right in the middle of a sentence. It stimulates me, and I think it helps me be in touch with all of you a little bit better. So please don't hesitate. Come on down. you got a brief bio. I just want to give you a very quick chronological order here. I did my degrees in psychology back a long time ago, and I spent 37 years at Illinois State University in Normal, Illinois. There's nothing worse than teaching psychology in a town called Normal. So I lived across the Division Street in Bloomington, Illinois, because I didn't want to live in Normal. But I've been doing consulting with my industrial organizational background with organizations for many, many years, and did it on a contract basis for many years. But in 1996, I, along with a master's student who was graduating with our program, started a business. I give him most of the credit for any success that my company's had, but I was there at ground zero, and I've seen it grow the whole way through. So I share a little bit of the entrepreneurial spirit with anyone that's in this room. I'm currently retired from the university, and that's fine with me. I'm done with that chapter of my career, but I stay involved with my company, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the result of some work I've done. But I also maintain an editorial board membership with Journal of Applied Psychology, trying to keep my head in some of the science that goes into what we do. What I'd like to do today, number one should be not bore you all to death, but I forgot to add that, and so here we are. I want to talk about the psychology of high potential. It's a very, very hot, important topic in human resource management in the United States. Is it a hot buzzword in Brazil? High potential for leadership, high potential employees? Is it something that, So I want to talk about some of that work, and then I want to explore its relevance for successful entrepreneurship. And as I said right up front, I'm really looking forward to hearing from you all rather than me telling you something, but we'll get to that. And if we can stimulate some questions and some discussion, that would be wonderful. So everyone in this room, in one way or another, is interested in entrepreneurship. I'm sure of that. Is the rest of the world interested in entrepreneurship? Let's find out. I did some really high-level, sophisticated, rigorous research, because that's the kind of guy I am. And I did simple Google searches of some keywords, and you will see that entrepreneurship is second only to sex and religion on Google, which, I mean, this shouldn't surprise anybody that this is a big time winner. But this was actually a surprising, because I just did this yesterday afternoon, and it was surprising to me that it made it into this. So I added a few terms to this list, and I think it's really interesting. I'm sorry that this is there, but look at Rio de Janeiro, Pele and Curitiba beat the Beatles and Mozart. I mean, and Taylor Swift. The bossa nova beat rock and roll. There's rock and roll and there's bossa nova. And of course, where my wife and I are going to be living, there's not a lot of interest, and that's okay with me. I don't want everyone to know about it. Anyway, here's the point of this slide. There is a lot of search activity on the word entrepreneurship, and I know this is a very crude metric, but it is of interest to people all over the world in one form or another. So the premise of what I want to talk about today is, if someone asked you what personal characteristics, what traits, styles, competencies, skills, knowledge base, lots of words get thrown around in the behavioral sciences, but if someone asks what's the core drivers, the fuelers of high potential functioning in an organization, what would you say? And at the end of my talk, maybe you'll have a little bit to say about that. So, talent management, and high potential leadership, really hot topic. Organizations are increasingly scrambling for employees and quality employees, as you all know. And the whole idea of high potential leadership is to identify employees early, either before they enter the organization or early in their career in an organization, and then nurture them and develop them and grow them as they move up into leadership roles. Even though I'm talking about it from the context of big enterprise, Fortune 500 type companies, I think it has some relevance for entrepreneurship, so we'll get to that. So here's a little bit of the backstory for why I'm talking about this today. A couple of years ago, some of the sales and client representatives of my company that deal with enterprise level HR representatives came to me and said, we keep getting requests for being able to identify high potential employees. And we don't specifically have any assessment tools to do that. Could you develop something? And that's what I do for my company, so I said, sure, I'll get to work on it. Well, the first thing that a geeky behavioral scientist does is go to the scientific literature, but I've always thought of having one leg in science and one leg in practice. That's how I've kind of defined my career. So I also went to the professional and trade and business literature to find out what people are reporting in the way of high potential identification systems and so forth. So I really tried to get deep into the behavioral science and deep into the practice of high potential or HIPO identification. And it didn't take me long to realize there are definitions out there of what a high potential employee is. There's no lack of definitions. The problem was there were just too many, and they were all very local. In other words, each organization or each consulting company or each industry defined high potential in their own way. And there's nothing per se wrong with that, but if you're a behavioral scientist, you want to identify characteristics that have some broad meaning across populations of people. So I realized I can't measure what I can't define, so now what kind of definition can be forged from all of this literature? And that's what I set out to do. So I discovered that there was no consensus in the scientific literature, and there was really no general idea of best practices for identifying, defining, identifying, and then actually assessing for high potential. So I dug even deeper. And I don't want you to read this. This is a classic bad PowerPoint slide. It has a lot of words. I'm just trying to impress you with one fact. I went through every one of these 30 journals, both practitioner-oriented and scientist-oriented, and combed through everything that I could find on high potential, the psychology of it, systems for identifying, and ended up identifying all of the credible research out there. I can't claim that I touched on every single, but did a really deep perusal of all this literature, and this is some of what I came up with. And by the way, I can document in more detail some of that process for anyone who would be crazy enough to be interested. I want to remind everybody, one of my favorite quotes from a famous social psychologist, the father of social psychology, Kurt Lewin. There is nothing so practical as a good theory. Here's my translation of that conceptually. You have to have some coherent thinking about whatever it is that you want to understand, or you're not going to understand it. So really, this may sound like an academic lecture thus far. I don't know why that would be. I only spent 37 years doing it. But I really do think there's something practically relevant to this. I'm not going to talk about the fact that we use this framework to actually assess candidates for high potential, but we do. So I already know that there's practical value to this, but I want to take my discussion in a slightly different direction with all of you. Anybody have any comments or questions? That's how good I am. So this is the definition that I forged. I didn't copy these words from any source. Obviously, the content of what's up here was forged by looking at the vast literature, but this is my definition of a high potential employee. A hypo is in the top echelon of the talent pool. That's really just saying that it was fairly consistent that high potential was not considered to be real common. It's not, everyone's not high potential. And it was a consistent estimate that 3 to 5% of the labor force or any local employee group would be considered high potential. A little bit later we can talk about relaxing that and taking a different view of it. A hypo is the top echelon of the talent pool with the foundational cognitive and emotional characteristics that consistently fuel agile personal learning, growth, and development. What you're growing and developing are knowledge, skills, work styles, competencies, we can fill in lots of words there, that are all required for delivering strong performance via a masterful use of professional networking, that's a really important component, as well as astute interpersonal and relational functioning, as well as being an authentic influencer of other people. And I bolded this because this is the most defining characteristic as it's conceptualized out there in the world today, that this is all in the service of identifying people that will rise up and take on greater and greater leadership responsibility. So after this intensive review of the literature and trying to find where different frameworks and different systems overlapped and said something very similar, using different words, I mean, that's what behavioral scientists do. That's how you make a name for yourself in modern behavioral science today. You come up with a new word, and then that's your word. Even though you're saying the same thing that someone else said 30 years ago, you're locally famous. At least you're a legend in your own mind. So I tried to cut through the challenge of language, what's the same and what's different, and found, according to me, 4 major domains of high potential functioning. One I'm calling the interpretive domain. This is the basic psychological equipment that people all have, but vary in terms of how they interpret the world around them. And I don't necessarily mean the cosmos, I mean work situations. Your characteristic way of thinking about work situations, for example, and your characteristic way of reacting to those things emotionally. And I'm going to get into a little more detail. Everyone has a variety of motivational fuel cells for what they do, and I'm going to break that down. And then interpersonal, kind of self-explanatory at this point, and then the influential domain, or what are those unique traits, those unique styles, those unique characteristics that make some people better able to herd or lead others, and so forth. So let's look in a little more detail here. The structure of this graphic is very, very deliberate, and there's some things I want you to be aware of that I'm trying to convey here. By the way, the general paradigm here is published in American Psychologist, the journal American Psychologist, and it has to do with describing the development of human personality. But I adapted it for our purposes, and I would love to defend it because I believe it's a very reasonable way to think. this is the core, this is a core or foundational level of people. And I don't want to get all psychological and throw around a bunch of terms, but I do want you to think of this as everyone's core characteristics that really then are built upon in layers as they live their lives and encounter different types of circumstances. So I call this a developmental sequence because this core starts forming, if you will, at birth or before, depending on your perspective, but really comes into clear structure and clear manifestation in early adulthood. And then as we go out into the world, we start developing a layer of striving and achievement and motivation for this, that, and the other. And then we develop a way to interact with our world. These two are the same color because these are intrapersonal characteristics. Everything we talk about here are going to be within you and individual to you. There's a famous quote in psychology, and it has some, I think, an elusive elegance to it. All people are like all other people, and all people are unlike all other people. And in a sense, what that quote is saying is, at the core level of human functioning, there's a lot of similarity between all of us. But as each of us sets out on our journey through life, we're developing more and more unique, specific, and personal characteristics. And that's kind of what's going on here. And we'll get into more detail, and I think that'll make some better sense. I want you to realize that some of this initial equipment, this initial basic core behavioral signature that is you and the person sitting next to you is relatively fixed. There's another term that can be used. It's called dynamically stable, which sounds like an oxymoron, but in fact, it really says we're all relatively fixed within a range of variation on some of these traits or characteristics, but we can do some movement. But I can't play soccer like Pele. Never could, never would be. In other words, I can get better at soccer if I go out and practice. I'm sorry, it's called football. Desculpa. But I can change myself to some degree. Well, when we're talking at this level and this level, there's a sliding scale, and these are relatively more malleable, more trainable, more developable. So I want you to just keep that in mind in the background. So I found that there were two classes of these thinking and feeling characteristics that define the interpretive core of one's functioning. And we're going to talk about this as the striving and learning aspect of motivation. We're going to talk about how people differ in terms of how they connect and how they respect. And we're going to then finally talk about how people, when they're in the process of influencing other people, how they mobilize and how they adapt that process of influencing and moving people. Okay, I'm going to go through this as quickly as I need to, and that can be pretty quick if that suits everyone, but I do want you to get a flavor of some of the behavior that I'm talking about, some of what defines high potential functioning. Everything that you're going to see for the next few slides comes right out of that constellation or the congealation of research and practice. So the beginning of every one of these could be, the research shows that high potential employees have a systems perspective of their workplace. You all know people that are incredibly accomplished at doing different kinds of tasks, doing their jobs really well. And by the way, let me just pause for a moment. High potential doesn't mean that someone else is not a good performer. In fact, it's important to distinguish between good performers and high potentials, because this is conceptualized as having the potential to develop into a high-level leader in an organization. It doesn't mean that people all around the high-potential employee aren't performing their jobs very, very well. So let's keep that distinction in mind. But high-potential employees, they don't look at the constituent parts of a work situation. They see, it's almost like in their minds they step back and they see the whole. And they can also recognize recurring patterns. And this can be patterns of interactions, this can be patterns of people, organizations doing different, it can be anything. I won't even go any further than that. High potential employees are adept at running mental simulations, being able to see something that doesn't exist now and imagining it in the future. That's something else that high pos are particularly adept at. They also, though, think in the past. They are naturally prone to, once an event has occurred, something's happened in the workplace that's of any significance, they're much more likely to reflect on it. In the literature, it's called counterfactual thinking, but that's starting to get a little geeky. But it's really just reflecting on what did I do or what happened and how could that situation, pardon me, how could that situation be different? Or how could I function differently in that situation? High potential employees also, they're not daunted by ambiguity, number one. That'll actually come out a little bit later. But they recognize meaning. It's almost like they can pull signal out of a background of noise. And I mean this in a metaphorical sense. I suspect that every one of you in your workplace have maybe an example of some specific there. And then, so I've been talking about how we think about, how we perceive, and how we cognitively deal with our workplace. Now let's talk about some of the emotional reactions that high pos tend to have. High pos are stable. Anyone in here have a psychology background, by the way? Psychology course? One hand, yes. Okay, then I won't tell you that this is really one of the big 5 personality factors, emotional stability, but descriptively, high potential employees remain calm even when there's some chaos around them. Now, it's a discussion that doesn't really have to happen as to whether they're seeming to be calm, but inside they're tumultuous. I mean, unless you're interested in studying burnout, which is where people remain calm on the outside but are turning and tearing themselves up inside, that's a separate area of psychology than what we're talking about. But high potentials tend to stay calm. They don't find taking calculated risks to be overly unpleasant. They know that they need to take certain risks. Stress is not their enemy. They understand stress and they understand that they need to manage it. And they tend to be, if you will, optimistic or resilient. They're hopeful even when some others would say that all is lost. They're saying, no, we've got a chance. So, okay, I'm gonna move through the rest of these more quickly, but all you have to do is pop your hand up and we can stop at any point. So we talked about the 2 domains of thinking and feeling with regard to the interpretive property of one's character or personality, however you want to describe it. Let's talk about two domains of motivation that hypos consistently differ on compared to other people. A high potential employee wants other people's feedback, and in particular, they seek out negative feedback. Tell me how I can improve on what I did. Tell me what I did wrong. How can I learn from this? Does anyone in the room know someone who doesn't really like to hear negative or critical feedback about their performance? Yeah, wow, the rest of you are really lucky. Hypos seek it out. Hypos are always searching for new information to make themselves more knowledgeable and to make themselves more equipped to the circumstances that are in their workplace. They also are, it's almost as though they have radar to seek out and initiate having developmental opportunities. Anyone know the phrase stretch assignment? Have you heard that phrase? A stretch assignment is a project or some type of task assigned to someone deliberately because it's outside of either their immediate capabilities or outside of their comfort zone. It's to stretch them. It's to help them grow, and hypos seek those out. They also just naturally like to collaborate with other people, and a little bit later we'll see that there's a higher level characteristic of seeing teams as valuable tools. We'll get to that, but this is at that core motivational level. Hypos are motivated to seek out others and to collaborate with them rather than taking your little niche and calling it your own. They really want to invite people into their work. So that's how hypos tend to learn about what they do in their jobs, and they strive for, they're motivated to attain the solution to unique problems. They love challenging or unique problems, solving something that's never been done before. They're also motivated. Don't confuse this with what we're going to talk about later. This merely means that hypos like to influence, they like to lead, they like to step into leadership roles. They also strive for goals, important goals, and they persist. They don't back out. They're dogged in that regard. And they love challenge, and they initiate that challenge. Okay, what else can we say about hypos? Well, with regard to the way they engage their outer world, their world of other people, their world of coworkers, their world of clients, their world of customers, their world of collaborators, contractors, and anyone they have to deal with, they initiate it. They're slightly extroverted at least. They seek out interacting with other people. They express their opinions openly. This isn't arrogance and it's not bullying. That's not the point. They are comfortable and confident in saying, this is what I believe, or this is why I think this is a good way for us to proceed. I alluded to this earlier. One of the noteworthy characteristics of a hypo is that they're really into creating a professional network. I'm not talking about having 50,000 likes on your Facebook page, although in some circumstances that could be a metric. But I am talking about maybe having connections on LinkedIn. The point is, but also, let's get away from social media. They develop lots of relationships. They meet people. They go out and try to establish professional relationships with the understanding that it's going to, it takes a village. We're all in this together. It's a community and we can all support each other. They're also really good at adjusting the way they communicate with other people to match the audience that they're talking to. They don't have just one tool in their communicative toolbox. High potential employees are viewed as authentic. They say what they do what they say. They encourage participation, get a little bit of a flavor of that earlier, but they like bringing in people from different backgrounds, different skills, different areas. They're warm. They're the type of people that you shake their hand and you feel like you've known them for 5 years and you don't know why, but this is another one of those basic personality characteristics called agreeableness. And they're attuned to other people. They're not wearing the blinders that a lot of people wear. They're attuned to the effect that they're having on people and so forth. So we're going to finish this out in the domain of how people lead or influence others. High potentials encourage others to be involved and to make decisions. They delegate responsibility. This can be done between two coworkers, and we're not talking about necessarily vertical delegation. You can delegate and allow someone autonomy to make decisions even laterally. They're enthusiastic. High potentials are evangelistic in a sense for the cause of whatever the workplace requires. They also will step out and influence the behavior of people that they think can do a job that contributes more. So they hold people accountable, but do it in the interpersonal ways that we talked about. They see teams as tools. They don't see teams as burdens. I'm not a big advocate for having lots of committee meetings. Having been in an academic institution and a small business, you don't want to attend a meeting that's not going to get something done. On the other hand, creating teams of people that can get something done that the individuals can't is seen as a valuable tool. They're transformative in the sense that they're actively involved in helping other people develop around them. This is a form of leadership empathy, if you will. They're perceptive of the way that the decisions or policies that they enact will affect not only other individuals, but other parts of an organization or other constituencies outside. Just like they can adjust their communication, they can adjust the way they influence people. If you're holding up a carrot and a stick, some people don't like carrots. So for that person, you hold up a stick and a Mentos or a piece of beef jerky, or I'll quit my examples right now. And they're also astute. In an earlier version of this framework, we called this politically savvy. We're really talking about people that understand the various agendas and various priorities and values of different parts of the organization politically. That's perfect because I made it. Okay. All right, now let's talk a little bit. Oh, I'm so glad Jen is clear. Sorry. Is any of this relevant to entrepreneurs? Is any of this relevant to small business? Is any of this relevant to starting a business, growing a business, and then running that business? And I'm going to say publicly, I'm not sure, but I was lucky enough to meet someone at this conference that I think might have some insights on that. Ricardo, would you come up here, please, and reflect on what you do right here?
Oops. How do we do this? There you go. Okay.
Ricardo's going to reflect on whether any of this, from the perspective of his business experience, whether any of it has any relevance. And I'm interested in what he has to say.
Boa tarde. Eu vou tentar ser bem breve, já que a gente tem um tempo limitado. Eu conheci o John no início da semana e tenho participado de todas as apresentações que houveram aqui, Business Agility e todos os temas correlatos a isso. E, para mim, eu disse para o John, faz bastante sentido, porque quando você está começando uma empresa nova, você está com uma startup, geralmente você está sozinho, ou com um sócio, ou 2 sócios num cenário melhor, e você é responsável por fazer tudo, desde a área comercial, administrativa, legal, estrutural, operacional, você está preocupado com 1 milhão de coisas. E quando o negócio começa a crescer e você começa a delegar, precisar de equipe para poder crescer, você vai ter que contratar gente. E se você, nesse processo de contratação, tiver a inteligência, e eu adorei esse PowerPoint, né? Eu vou querer levar isso para casa, você conseguir separar o joio do trigo, e na hora que você tiver 2 ou 3 candidatos para contratar, aquela lista final, e você não sabe qual deles contratar, você tiver uma capacidade de avaliar essas competências dos candidatos, contratar alguém que vai crescer junto com a empresa, que tem o drive individual, ele gosta de correr atrás de um desafio, você não precisa dizer para ele o que ele tem que fazer, ele vai buscar o desafio para ele vai buscar uma oportunidade de crescer, ele vai ser o olho do empreendedor e, fatalmente, vai tirar peso de quem estava inicialmente carregando toda a responsabilidade de tocar esse negócio novo. Eu tenho uma pequena empresa de TI, de desenvolvimento, que durante 18 anos trabalhou como fábrica de software, como recebendo requisitos, tome esse projeto, por favor, desenvolva, sem questionar, sem fazer nenhum tipo de pergunta, execute essa tarefa, esse projeto. E 5 anos atrás, querendo surfar a onda da mobilidade, desenvolver soluções que trouxessem receita recorrente para a empresa, em vez de sair para vender um projeto de 2 anos, 3 anos de desenvolvimento, a gente migrou, criou uma célula na empresa para desenvolver aplicativos, e aí o drive de fazer uma startup, né, é um spin-off, na verdade, acaba sendo um tipo de startup. Essa foi a realidade que a gente viu. Quando o produto ficou pronto e a gente teve que ir para o mercado, as pessoas que estavam no projeto, elas eram limitadas em determinados aspectos e a gente precisava ampliar isso. Graças a Deus, o produto que a gente desenvolveu era um produto, inclusive, de análise de competências, que permitia a gente escolher pessoas. Eu não tinha ainda essa maravilhosa relação de competências, mas, fatalmente, é o que eu disse para ele, vai ser maravilhoso poder usar esse tipo de coisa, porque se a gente puder contratar logo no início pessoas que querem crescer com a empresa e querem trabalhar na alta gestão de uma empresa desde o início, sem dúvida nenhuma, na minha opinião, faz todo sentido, John. Espero ter colaborado com a sua posição, né, com o estudo que você fez. Acho que... Opa.
I don't receive any royalties for pitching this book. Has anyone read this book? His first book is fascinating, but this book is, and you don't have to read them in order. I read his first book after I read this book. By the way, I've got a few years on me, and this book is the only book in my entire life that the day, and I can tell you where I was because I remember it, the day I read the last word, I immediately turned back and started reading it all the way through again. But what I wanted to call your attention to, he references this technical report by Fry. They've since published it. This technical report, or working paper, was published in 2013. In 2017, they published these results in a journal. Let me just show you what you can. They are predicting, and you can read their methodology, which jobs out of the 800 to 900 jobs that are in the U.S. Department of Labor's ONET, Occupational Information Network, every job in the U.S. society, they're predicting which ones by the year 2033 are going to be gone because they will have been replaced with an algorithm. Not a robot per se, and artificial intelligence gets thrown around a lot. We're just talking about digital algorithms that are going to do jobs, and what I put together was, this is just obviously a sample. This means there's a high risk that that job will be gone. It just won't exist. Well, you can go through their entire list of all occupations, and IT people, you can thank me later if this is helpful at all. Think about the connection between what a lot or most of you do. Every job that has, I put the H's there, they actually have probabilities, rank ordered. Every job that has a high probability of being gone is one where some IT and digital algorithmic replacement has done that. So it's an interesting read, the book, but this white paper, or working paper, is just an interesting, provocative description of our future. And with that, I want to thank you again for having me speak today.